Welcome to i-TUTOR Economics NCERT series. Today we are going to deal with Chapter 8, Infrastructure. Before we begin the chapter, let's think about something. Have you noticed that some Indian states seem to be doing much better than others? For example, Punjab, Haryana and Himachal Pradesh are known for their rich agriculture and horticulture. Maharashtra and Gujarat, they have become hubs of industries and trade. Kerala, which we lovingly call God's own country, is famous not only for its tourism but also for its high literacy, good healthcare and cleanliness. Karnataka, especially Bengaluru, has gained world attention as the IT capital of India. Now, the question is, why do these differences exist? Why are some states able to grow faster and provide better living conditions to their people? The answer lies in infrastructure. That means the basic facilities that support and sustain development, such as roads, electricity, schools, hospitals, transport, communication and power. Without good infrastructure, even if resources are available, progress becomes very difficult. So in this chapter, we are going to understand how infrastructure forms the backbone of economic and social development. So now we understand why some states perform better. It's because they have better infrastructure in the areas where they excel. For example, Punjab, Haryana and Himachal Pradesh have better irrigation facilities, which helps agriculture grow faster. Maharashtra and Gujarat have better transport and connectivity, and some areas are close to ports, making it easier to import raw materials and export goods. And Bangalore in Karnataka has world-class communication systems like internet, data centers and skilled manpower, which attract many multinational companies. So, what do all these have in common? They are all part of infrastructure, the support system that helps an economy to grow. Therefore, infrastructure includes all the basic facilities like transport, communication, power supply, irrigation, education and health services that support and sustain economic development. So now let's understand what exactly is infrastructure. Infrastructure means all the basic supporting services that help other sectors of the economy like industry, agriculture, trade and commerce to function efficiently. Think of it like this. Infrastructure is the backbone or foundation on which all economic activities stand. Without it, growth simply cannot happen. Look at some examples. Roads, railways, ports, airports, etc. They help goods and people move. What about dams, power stations, oil and gas pipelines? They provide energy. Then telecommunication facilities connect businesses and people. Then schools and colleges educate and build skilled manpower. Hospitals, sanitation, clean drinking water, they all improve health and living standards. What about bank, insurance and financial institutions? Yes, they make transactions smooth and support businesses grow. So, some parts of infrastructure give direct support like electricity, roads and railways, which directly help in production and trade. Others give indirect support like education and health, which build a more capable workforce and improve productivity. Now, there are mainly two types of infrastructure. What are they? Economic infrastructure and social infrastructure. Economic infrastructure supports production and business activities like example energy, transport, communication, banking and financial system. What about social infrastructure? It improves the quality of life and human development. For example, education, healthcare, housing, sanitation and clean water. In short, economic infrastructure builds the economy while social infrastructure builds the people, but together create a balanced and sustainable development path. Now let's look at the relevance of infrastructure. We know that infrastructure is the foundation of modern industrial economy. Infrastructure is like the base of a building. The entire structure of a modern economy rests on it. Without strong infrastructure, no country can grow efficiently. Industrial sectors need reliable electricity, then transport, communication, etc. for production and trade. What about for agriculture? For agriculture, it depends on road, railway, storage, irrigation and credit facilities to move inputs and sell outputs quickly. For example, farmers can now send perishable goods like fruits or flowers from Himachal or Kerala to cities within hours, thanks to highways and cold storage systems. Okay. Then support for modern agriculture. It supports modern agriculture. So the relevance of infrastructure is, first thing, it is the foundation of modern economy, and then it supports modern agriculture. Modern agriculture doesn't depend on rainfall or bullocks anymore. It needs transport to carry seeds, fertilizers and crops quickly. Then it needs electricity for irrigation, pumps and cold storage. Then it also needs banking and insurance to get loans and protect against crop losses. Without these, productivity remains low even if land is fertile. Now, it also boosts economic productivity. Third relevance is that it boosts economic productivity. Infrastructure helps increase productivity of all factors of production. All factors of production like land, labor and capital. For example, good roads reduce travel time, right? If we have good roads, it reduces travel time and it leads to lower transportation cost and faster delivery, more profit. And if we have reliable power, leads to continuous production and more output. So it boosts economic activity. Then what is the next relevance of infrastructure? Yes, it improves quality of life. It improves quality of life. Infrastructure doesn't only grow the economy, it also makes people live better. For instance, clean water and sanitation leads to fewer diseases. Then hospitals and health centers leads to longer, healthier lives, or it creates longer, healthier lives. Education facilities make skilled workers and informed citizens. Okay, then better infrastructure leads to lower morbidity plus higher life expectancy plus great productivity. So this is the third relevance. And fourth relevance. And what about the fifth one? Poor infrastructure leads to negative impacts. That means when infrastructure is weak or inadequate, what happens? Waterborne diseases like cholera and diarrhea spread easily. It spread easily. Then poor roads delay medical help in emergencies. Also, air pollution and traffic accidents increase health risk in cities. So bad infrastructure doesn't just slow growth, it harms human health too. In short, infrastructure is both an engine of economic growth and a pillar of human well-being. Okay, now let's look at the state of infrastructure in India. What about the state of infrastructure in our country, that is India? Earlier, government was the main builder. Traditionally, it was only the government's job to build and maintain infrastructure like roads, railways, dams, schools and so on. This is because infrastructure projects require huge investment and also long time to complete. Low and delayed returns are also there, so private companies weren't interested. For example, only the government could afford to build big dam projects like Bhakranangal Dam or Indian Railways in the early decades after independence. So, the problem was inadequate government investment. That means over time, India's need was to grow faster than what the government could fund. We have limited financial resources plus high fiscal burden, and it led to infrastructure shortage. And the result were poor roads, power cuts, lack of sanitation and traffic congestion. For example, many villages remained without electricity or proper roads even after decades of planning. And what happened now? Yes, now private sector joined hands. That means in 1990s, India adopted liberalization and economic reforms. Since then, the private sector has been encouraged to invest in infrastructure. This happens in two ways. What are those two ways? By itself and in partnership with the government. By itself, private companies build and operate projects. like toll highways or telecom networks. In partnership with the government, it is also known as public-private partnership. For example, Delhi Metro. It is a model of government and private cooperation. And private firms manage airports in Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru. Then, telecom revolution led mainly by private companies like Jio, Airtel and so on. So, why this change matters? Yes, it brings more funds, increases efficiency and speed, introduces new technology, reduces burden on government and so on. So in short, earlier infrastructure was only government's duty. Now infrastructure is equal to government plus private sector partnership. Now rural infrastructure in India. Let's look at the reality of rural infrastructure in India. Majority of India's population still lives in villages. Even though the world has made huge technological progress, rural India faces basic infrastructure shortages, especially energy, water and sanitation. Therefore, dependence on traditional energy sources are more. Rural women still depends on biofuels such as crop residues, cow dungs and fuel wood. They walk long distance daily to collect these fuels, which takes time and effort. So even with satellite and smartphones, many rural homes still cook using firewood. This shows the gap between progress and ground reality. According to census of 2001, only 56% of rural households had an electricity connection. Around 43% still depends on kerosene for lighting. This lack of electricity limits children's study hours and reduces productivity. Also, 24% of rural households had tap water at home. About 76% depended on open sources such as well, tanks, ponds, lakes, rivers or canals. Such sources are often unsafe and seasonal. It affects our health and hygiene too. And as per NSSO report of 1996, only 6%, remember that only 6% of rural households had improved sanitation. This means 94% lack proper toilets, leading to open defecation and spread of diseases. Therefore, poor sanitation and unsafe water are not just hygiene issues. They directly impact health, productivity and even school attendance of children, especially girls. Therefore, electricity only 56% and then connected cooking fuel 90%, they use biofuels and 76%, 24%, etc. Remember that data, okay. Now, rural India still lacks basic infrastructure like electricity, clean water and sanitation. This slows down development and affects quality of life, especially for women. Okay. Now, India lags behind other developing countries in infrastructure development. State of some infrastructure in India in comparison to few other countries. Let's look at that. India still lags behind developing countries in infrastructure development. India only spends 5% of its GDP on infrastructure. Okay, only 5%. In contrast, China and Indonesia invest much more, which is one reason they have developed faster. So if infrastructure is the foundation of a house, India is still building its ground floor, while countries like China are already on the third or fourth floor. Okay. Now, economists predict that India could become the third largest economy in the world in the coming decades. In the coming decades, economists predict that we will become the third biggest economy. But to achieve that, India must massively boost investment in infrastructure like roads, power, transport, water, communication and so on. Without strong infrastructure, growth cannot be sustainable. So the key idea is growth needs a foundation, and that foundation is infrastructure, that's all. We know that infrastructure requirements change as countries get richer. Infrastructure requirements changes as countries become richer. Low income developing countries like India, they need irrigation, transport, power etc. Like they need basic facilities. What about middle income industrializing countries like China? Yes, their infrastructure means energy, ports, railways and highways. What about high income developed countries like USA and Japan? For them, infrastructure means power, communication, internet, research infrastructure and so on. So when a country is poor, it first needs road, water and electricity. But once it's developed, it needs fast internet, airport, then digital system and so on. Okay. In high income countries, people already have food and basic facilities. So their economy depends more on services, information technology and research. These require efficient power supply and advanced telecommunication. Hence, a large share of infrastructure goes there. So, the summary is India invests only 5% of GDP in infrastructure, that is much lower than China or Indonesia. Strong infrastructure means it leads to faster economic growth. As income rises, infrastructure demand shifts from basic to advanced. India must increase infrastructure investment to reach its growth goal. Okay. Now, let's look at the connection between infrastructure and economic development. Economic development cannot happen without infrastructure. Development of infrastructure and economic development go hand in hand. Agriculture, industry and services all rely on supporting structures. For example, agriculture, they need irrigation facilities, electricity, roads for transporting inputs and outputs and so on. What about for industries? They need power, transport and communication to produce goods efficiently. So, constraints if ignored are lack of infrastructure slows down production, raises cost and limits growth. Think of it like trying to run a factory without electricity or proper roads. Output will always be low. So the chapter will cover two critical types of infrastructure, energy and health. Energy means power generation, supply, fuel and so on. Health means medical facilities, sanitation, diseases and diseases control. So farmers need water, factories need power, people need health, infrastructure, etc. So infrastructure make it all work. Now, energy. Why we need energy? Energy is a key driver of development. Without it, industries, agriculture and services cannot function efficiently. Why? Because it is used in industries. For what? It is used in industries for powering machines, factories, production lines and so on. It is also used in agriculture for operating tractors, pumps, producing and transporting fertilizers and pesticides. Then, is it used in households? Yes, for cooking, lighting, heating and running appliances. So, could a factory produce goods or a farm grow crops efficiently without energy? The answer is a complete no. Okay, so now let's look at the sources of energy in India. Sources of energy in India. There are commercial energy and non-commercial sources of energy. Commercial energy, they are bought and sold in markets like coal, petroleum, electricity, etc. It accounts for about 50% of India's energy consumption. Mostly they are non-renewable or exhaustible except for hydropower. Okay. Then what about non-commercial sources of energy? They are not sold or found naturally or locally. For example, firewood, agriculture waste, dried dung and so on. They are mostly renewable and more than 60% of Indian households rely on these traditional sources for cooking and heating. Okay, now non-conventional sources of energy. Both commercial and non-commercial sources of energy are known as conventional source of energy. Okay, they are known as conventional source of energy. There are three other sources of energy which are commonly termed as non-conventional source of energy. What are they? Solar energy, wind energy and tidal power. Solar energy means energy from the sun. Wind energy harnessed from moving air, and tidal power means energy generated from ocean tides. Now, why India can benefit from this? Yes, India is a tropical country. Being a tropical country, India receives plenty of sunlight almost year around. So we have a high solar potential. Now, India also have long coastline and hilly regions. Okay, it is suitable for wind and tidal energy. Technology already exists to harness these energies. With investment, India can develop even cheaper, cost-effective technologies. Now, consumption pattern of commercial energy in India. So, 65% of total energy consumed in India is commercial energy. Let's break it up. Among that, coal is 55%, oil 31%, natural gas 11%, and hydro energy 3%. So overall consumption of commercial energy is 65%. Among that, coal is 55, oil 31, natural gas 11, and hydroelectricity 3%. What about non-commercial energy? Yes, 30 to 35% of total energy is non-commercial energy. It includes firewood, cow dung, agriculture waste, and so on. India is heavily dependent on imports for crude oil and petroleum. We are heavily dependent on imports for crude oil and petroleum. Import dependence is expected to grow over 100% in the near future. This makes energy security a major concern for India's economic development. In 1953-54, transport sector becomes the largest consumer of commercial energy. Share of transport now declined, and now share of industrial sector increased significantly. Okay, now industrial sector has been increasing, transport sector declined. What about oil and gas? Highest share among all the commercial energy types are oil and gas. The share of oil and gas is the highest among all commercial energy. Therefore, let's link it to economic growth. Rapid economic growth leads to increased energy demands across all states. Industrialization and urbanization drive the shift from transport dominated to industry dominated energy consumption. Now, power or electricity. It is also a critical component of infrastructure. Most visible form of energy, often equated with modern civilization and progress. Critical for economic development, it means growth in power demand usually outspaces GDP growth. For example, 8% GDP growth, power supply must grow almost 12% annually. That means for 8% GDP growth, power supply must grow 12%, around 12% annually. Electricity is secondary energy produced from primary energy sources like coal, hydrocarbons, hydronuclear, and renewable energy. What about energy classification? We have primary energy, that means direct consumption of fuel like coal, oil, hydropower, etc. What about secondary energy? Secondary energy means electricity, coal, oil, natural gas, etc. reflects ultimate energy available to consumers. In India in 2003-4, thermal sources, 70% of power generation capacity was from thermal sources. So thermal sources account for almost 70% of the power generation capacity. Then hydro, wind and nuclear sources account for 28%. Nuclear energy account for 2.4%. What are the policies and focus? Hydel and wind energy are encouraged as they do not rely on fossil fuels. Then it reduces carbon or to avoid carbon emission. Environmentally, nuclear energy is environmentally advantageous and potentially economical in the long run. And the current share is at present nuclear energy accounts for only 2.4% of total primary energy consumption against a global average of 13%. Now, challenges in the power sector. Electricity generated is not fully available to consumers. A part is used internally by power stations auxiliaries. Significant losses occur during this transmission. What reaches homes, office and factories is the net availability. Okay, electricity generated is not fully available to us. What reaches home, office and factories is the net availability after using it by the power station auxiliaries. And India's electricity generation cannot support 7% economic growth. India's electricity generation cannot support 7% economic growth. So the demand projection need for 1 lakh MW additional capacity. Actual annual addition is only 20,000 MW, creating a capacity gap. Existing plants are underutilized, often due to poor operation and maintenance. What about financial weakness of SEBs or state electricity boards? State electricity boards are responsible for distribution of electricity. They incur huge financial losses exceeding rupees 500 billion. This affects investment in infrastructure, maintenance and expansion. Therefore, India faces a shortage of generation capacity, high transmission losses and financial instability in distribution, all of which constrain power supply and economic growth. Now let's look at power supply or power distribution in Delhi. There is a history of management. In 1951, Delhi State Electricity Board was established, or DSEB was established. In 1958, what happened? It is replaced by Delhi Electricity Supply Undertaking, or DSU. In 1997, Delhi Vidyut Board or DVB was formed. Delhi Vidyut Board was formed. Now it is privatized and managed by two companies, that is DISCOMs. Okay. Then BSES or BSES Reliance Energy Limited in South and West, and BSES Rajdhani, and Central and East BSES Yamuna. South and West, what is there? BSES Rajdhani in Central, then BSES Reliance Energy Limited in South and West, and East is BSES Yamuna. What about Tata Power NTPL? It is in Northwest. Then 23 grid infrastructure grid is supplied to 28 lakh consumers. Tariffs and policies overseen by Delhi Electricity Regulatory Commission. Okay. Now what are the challenges and inefficiencies here? For the transmission and distribution losses due to technical inefficiency and electricity theft. Then pricing issue, that means wrong pricing of electricity leading to financial stress on DISCOMs. Then limited private and foreign participation, that means private sector and foreign investors yet to play a major role in generation and distribution. Then public discontent, high tariff and frequent power cuts create unrest. And the last one is raw material shortage. Thermal power plants face shortage of coal and other raw materials affecting generation. Okay, so the energy demand and the role of renewable in India, that is what we are going to discuss. The current situation is economic growth and population increases are driving energy demands faster than supply. India must increase public investment, promote R&D, that means research and development, explore new energy sources and use renewable energy. And what about private sector's role? Private sector has contributed significantly, especially in wind energy. India is the 5th largest producer of wind power, with less than 95% of investment from private companies. Then we have greater reliance on renewable energy brings economic, social and environmental benefits. Now energy savings. Promoting the case of compact fluorescent lamps, I mean CFLS, is very important to save energy. CFLS use 80% less electricity than traditional bulbs. Let's look at an economic example. Replacing 1 million 100-volt bulbs with 20-volt CFLS saves 80 megawatt of power. What about monetary savings? Yes, almost rupees 400 crore at rupees 5 crore per megawatt of installed capacity. Therefore, energy efficiency is as important as increasing supply. CFL adoption reduces power generation burden and cuts. So that's all for today's part. We have completed up to energy. In the next video, we will move on to health and the remaining topics of this chapter. Thanks for watching. For more related contents, do like, share and